Welcome to Conversations again. I'm Muqtadar Khan, and today I'm going to talk to you about the developments in Nepal. It's very, very concerning. The Prime Minister Oli has given up power. He's resigned, and there seems to be complete chaos, sort of chaos, taking place in Nepal. I mean, there are people who may come to power. There is somebody called Balendra Shah, who is the current mayor of Kathmandu. He is being proposed as the potential new prime minister. At least the Gen Z protesters are the ones who are demanding that he become the next prime minister of Nepal. The developments happen very, very quickly, and it is not surprising. I will try and share some interesting information and data with you guys to show as to why this should not be a surprise. First of all, since it has become a democracy and it gave up a monarchy, the country has been in a state of, shall we say, uh, chaos. It has had like some 14, 15 governments change or something like that in 17 years, or so many different prime ministers have come and gone. So there has been political turmoil and uncertainty going on at a low level. And when you have people coming in and going out for such short periods of time, it becomes very difficult for them to institute and govern properly or implement new projects, do something for the welfare uh, of the people. So first of all, let me tell you what happened and what really triggered it. So the Nepalese government passed new laws to cover basically social media. They are worried that the social media is spreading false information. In these days, nearly everybody is adding to this false information, fake information coming around from lots of people, not just troublemakers, but also from dissidents, also from governments, etc. People using AI now are just using bots. So yes, it is a challenge to, especially in moments of crisis, to 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 not blame social media for exacerbating political problems. So they also said that they wanted all social media companies like Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, etc., to open offices in Nepal and have a representative there, and also have some mechanism by which, if the Nepalese government objected to certain content on that social media, that should be removed. So apparently, only one or two, including TikTok, complied with it. That's why TikTok was going on. But around September 4th, the Nepalese government then completely banned all of the major social media uh, platforms such as Facebook and X and YouTube and so on. And can you imagine today living in this world without having access to your Instagram? Not only that, a lot of people are earning their living from this social media, I know many reporters in India and many parts of the world who have quit their mainstream jobs or have been fired from their mainstream positions and now who earn their living on YouTube. And then there are other entertainers and influencers on various social media. So a lot of people might have had some source of income coming to them from social media, and suddenly the government completely blocks them off. Plus, these days, a lot of young people, for them, the social media is how they connect with each other and how they connect with the world. So that is how they learn about what's going on. Most young people get their news from TikTok and Instagram, not from Google News or major newspapers, etc. So there was spontaneous protest, and the government came down pretty hard. They killed about 19 people and they injured more than a few hundred of them. I mean, the police response was quite brutal. And that further exacerbated the protests which went on. Remember, the blocking of the social media, usually countries justify blocking of social media is to say, oh, in moments of crisis, when there are riots taking place, when there are trouble going on, like India shut down social media in Kashmir, and then the British government had shut down when Cameron was prime minister. They had shut down Twitter, I think, when there were some protests and riots going on in UK. So governments think that by controlling information, they can control the situation, but there are studies. I think it was Princeton University which conducted a study of more than 1,000 such lockdowns by governments of social media, and they discovered that locking down social media does not help improve the situation at all. In fact, it can make it worse. Because when there is a moment of crisis, even the government has an opportunity to reach out to people by posting the right thing. So if there's all these rumors going on that this is happening, that is happening, if you trust the government, then the government says, look, this is not happening, that is happening. And if you want to tell people stay in home or whatever, the government also will not have access to social media. So anyway, but the protests continued even after the social media, and then the prime minister then withdrew the ban and brought back all social media. But the momentum of the protests continued. They were angry for many reasons, and that's what I'm going to talk about. That uh, that banning social media was a trigger, but the conditions for the protest and anger had been going on for years, and I'll point out to you and show you some data as to why this really happened. All right, so So anyway, he withdrew the ban, but the protests continued, and there was so much of anger that ultimately the prime minister had to resign. And his Balendra Shah, or the guy who is the mayor of Kathmandu, is now who's also a rapper, by the way. There are lots of rumors going on in India, particularly that this is a U.S. Triggered regime change. And apparently, Balendra Shah had met the U.S. ambassador in February or something of this year, and so there's a lot of talk going on. Look, if you are a mayor of the city, if you're a mayor of Delhi, aren't you going to meet the Delhi's ambassador? You know how many times Prime Minister Modi has met U.S. ambassadors? Many, many times. That doesn't mean that there's a regime change going on in India. Mike Huckabee meets with Netanyahu every other day in Israel. That doesn't mean the U.S. is trying to perpetrate a regime change. And even if the US did start its regime change uh, procedure, whatever the technique is, in Nepal in February, this is September. So, what is happening to the great Indian intelligence agency? What is Mr. Uh, Ajit Doval and his raw people doing? Don't they know what's happening in their backyard? They missed the Bangladesh so called regime change. Now they miss the Nepalese. The Indian intelligence is not as good as we think. It seems to be quite useless as far as I'm concerned. They would have been effective if they had anticipated this. And I don't know whether they want this regime change or not, but why blame the US? This is your backyard. India is supposed to be the hegemon of South Asia. They want to dominate the region, and they don't know what's happening in this tiny little country. There are only two Hindu majority countries on planet Earth. One is India, and the other is Nepal. And India doesn't know what's going on in Nepal while having a Hindu Rashtra and Hindutva government in Delhi. I find that quite interesting, and so should you. But let me tell you why this thing was coming. Why this thing was coming. And so let me show you this data first of all. Take a look at this data. This data is for the last 4 years. So Nepal is a country of about 30 million people, and its GDP is $40 billion, which means its per capita GDP is like 1,000 and more. It is a poor, poor, poor country. It's really very poor country. When India is a poor country, and Nepal's GDP per capita is half of India's, or even less than half of India's, less than half of Bangladesh. It's poorer than Pakistan. So it is probably one of the poorest countries, uh, maybe better than Afghanistan, but otherwise the poorest country in South Asia. And it's a pretty big country with about 30 million people. So its per capita is 1,000 plus dollars. And if you look at the year 2023, 2020, there's not much. The growth rates are very small, 2 to 3% growth rates. So it's not growing very fast either in its GDP. But the big figures and scary figures are what I call as the misery index. So if you look at the misery index in 2022, inflation was 7.65%, and unemployment rate was 10.9%. So the misery index is over 18%. over 18%. And then in 2023, it is 17%. So it's getting slightly better, but the misery index remains above 15%. If in the US, if the misery index goes over 10%, which is inflation and unemployment, then the incumbent government definitely loses the election. The president has never won a second term if the misery index was above 10%. They say that 6 to 7 is satisfactory. After that, people start becoming dissatisfied. 10% is terrible. And then people are completely disenchanted and frustrated. So what I'm trying to show to you is that the Nepalese population, by and large, would have been very upset for the past 4 years. And why are they upset? The story is the same. Whether you look at Bangladesh, whether you look at Nepal, whether you look at the riots that were happening in Indonesia until recently, Sri Lanka, what happened? One, bad governance. The governments are not giving the people what they want. Number two, the governments are corrupt. There is nepotism. And one of the big slogans of the Nepalese protest was Nepo kids. The same protest you saw during the protest in Bangladesh against Sheikh Hasina of nepotism. Sheikh Hasina was accused of giving all critical jobs and admissions in colleges and reservations, etc., to people from her party. So there was widespread nepotism in Bangladesh. There's widespread nepotism here. There was one additional crisis in Sri Lanka, which was about gas, etc. But it was bad governance, corrupt leadership. And in Nepal, too, the corruption has become so much. And there's this frustration and disenchantment with the elite. People are upset with the elite. The elite are corrupt, and the elite are basically robbing their own country. They are nepotistical, their family members and their relatives are getting jobs and contracts and state benefits where the rest of the people are not. And another problem in these countries, like there is even in India, is youth unemployment. So young people are doing what they're supposed to do. What do we tell young people? Study hard, work hard, go to school, do your homework, and then you will get a good job, and then you can marry and you can have a house, and then you can say these same things to your children. But that's not happening. Young people are working hard, they're going to colleges, they're getting professional degrees, but they're not getting jobs. So the youth unemployment is very, very high. And I have bad news for you. It's going to get worse. It is going to get worse. Everywhere. In India itself has gone over 20% youth unemployment, educated youth. So you're going to be educated, you're going to be unemployed, you're going to be a burden on your family. And if your country is poor, which means that it won't have a safety net, like Nepal, it's not growing fast. 3% is not a good rate at all for a country with a small economic base and a developing. It's a low income economy. It should be growing at 10%. So these are the challenges across the board. The South Asia seems to be collapsing. In the last few years, we have seen governments change in Pakistan. There was obviously a major shift in Afghanistan, but that was by war and the US withdrawal. So the Taliban came to power there in 2021. Imran Khan was overthrown in Pakistan. The Sri Lankan government was overthrown. Mass protests took place there. Mass protests failed in Pakistan, but they were successful in bringing about change in Sri Lanka, and mass protests in Bangladesh last year brought about change in Bangladesh. Things haven't improved. Bangladesh's growth rate has also gone down to 3%, and now we see that mass protests, which were like just a few days, were able to topple the government. And the situation currently is very bad. It seems that many ministers are hiding in security services, like I don't know whether they're going into military bases or whatever and hiding. So there is a danger to people in the government there. So across Asia, we are beginning to see this protests against governments, and the causes are the same: bad governance, corrupt governance, the elite basically robbing their own country, and no benefits for the poor, and all this big talk about we are against socialism, we are against communism. Really, in India, they talk a lot about this, but they're all very socialist, including the Modi government. They do all these Labharti policies, give free food to like 800 million people, and all kind of benefits. If you don't do that, there will be protests and there will be huge upsets. So what has happened in Nepal is not unusual, and it should have been expected and anticipated. I'm surprised after looking at the data. I don't watch Nepal very closely. I look at it broadly in the context of South Asia. We look at Nepal as, basically handling geopolitics between India and China. Oli was a special guest at the SCO, where he basically objected to India and China trading through a particular pass. He came up with a new map for Nepal. So a lot of nationalism is also being revved up in Nepal. But the governments need to do what they need to do, which is to provide clean, effective governance to their people. And wherever there is corruption, wherever there is nepotism, you are seeing that people are rising up against them. Initially, the governments are suppressing them, and then, like even in Indonesia, 10 people were killed. And what it did was didn't stop the protests; it intensified the protests. And here, in such a tiny country like Nepal, which is one-tenth the size of Indonesia, 19 people were killed by the police. So there are many reasons why the people are very upset. Police brutality, unemployment. I showed you the unemployment rate is about 10% plus. That is huge. Inflation is above 5%, hovering around 7%. So you don't have a job. There's the price of everything is going up. And then you see some people benefiting from the system because they are connected. So there's a lot of nepotism. And then you see a growing divide between the rich and the poor because those who are in power are taking advantage of the poor. So there's a lot of corruption. So all of this contributes to frustration and anger and dissatisfaction with the government. And so it was, once you looked at the data, I can tell you that I'm not at all surprised that there was. Sometimes these conditions prevail and there are no triggers. There are no triggers. And so banning the social media was a trigger. So you have a lot of unemployed young people in your country. What are they doing? What do young unemployed people do? They watch reels. They are on Facebook, not on Facebook. They're on Instagram. They're on TikTok. Either they are making reels or they're just watching reels. And even if you take away the only thing that they have in their lives, they are obviously going to explode. And shutting down the social media didn't shut down the protests. They only continued to intensify. So I think these are some lessons for governments in the region. Cut down on the corruption. Try to deliver, especially Nepal, which is a fledgling and new and upcoming democracy. It just overthrew its monarchy, I think, in 2007 or 2008. So in the last 17 years, it has had more than 10 new prime ministers. So there has been political instability. See, growth and development comes from stability and good governance. And without good governance, you are going to face such troubles. So anyway, since I'm live, if there are any interesting questions or comments, I'll be happy to take. Clearly, not many people in India are interested in Nepal, even though it's a neighbor. They should be more interested. I'm so surprised that the Indian government is caught by surprise. I'm still flabbergasted at the incompetence of India's intelligence services. They didn't know this was coming. They didn't know what was happening in Bangladesh. I don't know what they do. Okay, so Hitesh, I think I answered your question. I don't think that the United States has time, Donald Trump has time to focus on regime change in Nepal. And what do we gain by regime change in Nepal? Nepal is too too embedded in the Chinese ecosystem already, and it'll cost US. You will have to spend billions of dollars in Nepal to take it away from China. And I don't know whether Donald Trump is ready to spend billions of dollars for Nepal. So, what is the US interest in bringing about regime change in Nepal? The government was not anti US at all. If there was any government that had a motivation to bring about regime change in Nepal, it is the Indian government, because Nepal was steadily moving closer and closer to the US, to China, and with that new railway line, which they are on the point. Uh, right now, India kind of squeezes Nepal because everything that Nepal needs goes through India or comes from India. So once that railway track that China is building to Nepal uh, comes through, then Nepal will become quite independent of India. And so, if there is any motivation for any country to have an impact on the politics of Nepal, it is India and China, not the US. Uh, Sharif, it depends on who comes to power, Sharif. In India, we will see in Nepal. Uh, I don't know what the how this fellow Bhalendra Shah, who is the mayor of Kathmandu, I had not heard of his name till today. Apparently, he's a rap singer. He's very popular with the young people. And on social media, people are sharing his photograph with in 2023. That's 2 years ago. He met with the Chinese ambassador, and I'm telling you, that's not a big deal. If you are living in Washington, if you're the mayor of Washington D.C. and you meet the ambassador of India, so what? It doesn't mean that India is causing regime change in the U.S. That's not the point. So maybe he's meeting them because he wants some aid from the embassy. Maybe he's trying to organize a conference and he wants some support from the U.S. embassy. I don't know what the reason was. I'm just seeing the photographs right now on social media. There are all these implications that he met with the Chinese ambassador in 2023, and then in February of this year he met with the U.S. ambassador. So I don't know. Nobody's sharing photographs whether he met with the Indian ambassador or not in the last 2 years. And if he has not, then that's a good question as to why he has not. So we don't really know whether he's pro-India or anti-India yet. At least I don't know. So I cannot promise. But if he is someone who's really pro-China and not pro-India, then it will cost India more and more money. Remember what happened with Muizzo in Maldives. He won the election in Maldives with India Out campaign. And subsequently, India had to really spend millions of dollars for Modi to get an invitation to Maldives. And so I did a whole show on all the stuff that India had to do for Maldives to normalize with Maldives once again. But then again, the biggest investor now in Maldives is also China and not India. So China is outbidding India in every country that neighbors India. And same with Nepal, same with Bangladesh. So India is not able to compete with China. And on top of that, India bullies its neighbors. And so they're pissed off. I have had some Nepalese scholars here at my university in the program that we run for the State Department. And they have told me very clearly that India bullies them. They're not very thrilled about how India conducts its foreign policy in its neighborhood. So we have that thing. China gives more money, more investments. They're all part of Belt and Road initiatives. Nepal, Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India bullies them. So India has to perhaps change its foreign policy. Uh, Guman, I will do a Hindi show soon, tomorrow maybe. I want my students who are studying politics of developing nations to be able to watch this show, and therefore this is in English. Yes, Ranjan, I agree. This is the best comment we got. It's completely organic, highly corrupt government. People were protesting. The social media ban ignited the whole country. Exactly. You have summarized what I'm trying to say. That there was a protest triggered by the social media ban, and that momentum took place. People were already unhappy. As I said, first of all, the economy is not doing well. Inflation is high. Unemployment is high. Youth unemployment is even higher. There is corruption in the government. There is nepotism in the society. So there is a lot of resentment in the society. Absence of good governance is the reason why this happened. Thank you. This is the best. You are the MVP, Ranjan Kumar, for today. Mr. Rathor, how are you? Ah, I hope so. I hope so. Uh, I agree with you. Ranjan is making good points. Dot dot, your question is interesting. Dalai Lama, according to the religious tradition, he basically picks his successor, but he doesn't live in Tibet. Would you like a foreigner to pick? I mean, he's lived in India for what, more than 50 years now. So there's this fear that they might end up with two Dalai Lamas, one living in India, or maybe he might choose to live somewhere else in the West or somewhere else, and one in Tibet. So if the Chinese appoint somebody or select somebody as a Dalai Lama, that person will actually have more impact in Tibet. And initially, maybe the Tibetans may not accept him, but with over time, if he does a good job in Tibet, at least providing religious services, I think that he could then make the Dalai Lama who is overseas irrelevant. I think the Israeli lobby is putting some pressure. Food blogger asks this question about the Israeli lobby putting pressure on Donald Trump to be nice with India. And India did a very clever thing by bringing that mass murdering Smotrich, Israel's war criminal finance minister, to India to sign a deal with Indian finance minister. And maybe uh, as a result of that, the last tweet from Donald Trump was very, oh, I'm going to call Modi in a few weeks and we are making progress. But I can tell you, Israeli lobby or no, I don't think Donald Trump is going to reverse his positions on India unless India makes some concessions on its tariffs and trade. It's not going to be as it was in April. India will have to open some segments of the market, reduce trade barriers, etc. Otherwise, Donald Trump is not moving on that. That much I can tell you. And I don't know how he gets out of the Russia related sanctions. If India continues to buy Russia oil, uh, it will look like a defeat if Donald Trump takes off that 25%. So we are looking at the only reciprocal tariffs of 25%. We'll see what happens with that. That's a very good question. Dot dot. I just finished doing a live show on the attack in Qatar. Qataris have invested in the US $1.2 trillion. They promised. They gave a $500 million plane to Donald Trump. They have a base with 10,000 American soldiers sitting inside Qatar. And they have been working with the US for the last 25 years, and America did not protect it. In fact, the country that America protects the most attacked it. So in the last 3 months, Qatar was attacked by two countries. Iranians also shot at the US base in Qatar and violated Qatar's national sovereignty, and the Israelis did it too. And America did nothing. So if I was, there are no voters in Qatar. See, that's why the Qatari regime can get away by making stupid mistakes and pursuing a foreign policy which does not correspond with public opinion. Anyway, so there are no more questions and comments. So thank you for watching Conversations. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and do share this video with your socio-political network. And I wish Nepal and Nepalese all the best. Take care. Bye.